Everyone, it's Friday. Hard to believe as the days blur. I'm Audrey Russo. I'm the president and CEO of the Pittsburgh Technology Council. I am thrilled to have day number 4 of Generation Fempreneur in partnership with Liftoff, which is part of the Jewish Healthcare Foundation. And I'm sad that it's 4 days, but that it's over. But I think you're going to be really thrilled by the conversation that we're continuing to have. So thank you for the partnership, and thank you for our guests. So a couple of things. This is, we have a bunch of sponsors at the Tech Council that have really helped us do this work. And I want to give some shout outs to them really quickly. Huntington Bank, Sheets, and Comcast. Each one of them has provided incredible value to the community in terms of the pandemic and small businesses. And Sheets is even working on innovation themselves right here in Pittsburgh. Comcast is working on the digital divide, making sure that people have lots of access to Wi-Fi. So if you hear that noise in the background, it's thunder. So I can't mute that. So a little bit, we have a chat in here, and you'll be allowed to, ask questions. Our moderator will, keep her eye on the questions and make sure that we're including any of the conversation. I think you're really going to be excited by the conversation and the local work that's happening here. And particularly in UpPrize, and you're going to get a chance to do a little bit of a deep dive in that space. It's really work around social good that's changed the conversations in terms of entrepreneurship in the region. And I then want to give one reminder that next week on Monday, we're kicking the week off with Mark Melandro. And Mark Melandro actually works in Palo Alto for the Chan Zuckerberg Foundation, and he leads life sciences and life sciences operations for the organization, and he works directly for the foundation CEO. He was previously with the University of Pittsburgh. He ran all their innovation and their commercialization. So I'm going to be quiet now, thank everyone, and I'm going to pass the baton to our friend Mara at Liftoff PGH.
Thank you, Audrey. So what a week we have had. Thank you. I've said this every day, and I mean it so much. Thank you, Audrey, to you and to your team, to Brian and everyone over at the Tech Council for this wonderful partnership. We are absolutely thrilled to work with you on this series. It's wonderful to have partners that have such aligned missions and sort of goals for the region. I'd also like to shout out just quickly my team, Megan Butler, Natalie Stewart, some fabulous interns, Caitlin Roderick, Khaloud Al-Ali, and Natalie Pyle for helping to put this together. It's awesome to have a team of rock star women surrounded around us. So thank you for their hard work. And on behalf of our president and CEO, Karen Feinstein, JHF is so proud to partner with the Tech Council. So really thank you. Liftoff is coming in December. We're so excited. It is going to be a month-long virtual event with lots of content, all geared at bringing people together to have important conversations about how do we move our region forward to be a true leader nationally and global in the healthcare and life sciences innovation space. We have tremendous assets to showcase here, all the way from our academic institutions to our startup community. And so we're thrilled to take a month to bring you all kinds of creative and fun content. So please do join us in December. We've had a tremendous response to the Fempreneur Week. I was chatting with Audrey. I think an encore is due in December. So hopefully we can bring you some more killer fempreneurs from the region in December to hear from them. So please, check us out, liftoffpgh.org. Join us in December. We're looking forward to seeing you all then. So I'd now like to turn over the conversation to a friend and colleague. Natalie Bencivenga will be our moderator today. She is a contributor to Pittsburgh Live Today. She was formerly with the Post-Gazette. She's an award-winning journalist and media personality. A lot of people don't know this about Natalie, but she actually has her master's in social work and is a licensed therapist in her earlier life. And so she is incredibly passionate about issues of social equity, gender equity, and just very up on current issues and really working herself to raise voices up, especially voices of women and people of color. So we are so excited to have Natalie with us to lead this conversation, and I will let her bring up our speakers.
Thank you so much, Mara. It's always so nice to see you and to be with everybody. This is so wonderful. I really appreciate the introduction. And so now, without further ado, the stars of today's show are two incredible women that I had the pleasure of getting to know recently, Erica Friedman of Innovation Works and Kimberly Eckel. And I'd like both of them actually to share a little bit about themselves and how they kind of found their way through the many roads that they took to where they got in the world of tech, healthcare, and innovation. So Kimberly, can you tell us a little bit about your work?
Absolutely. So hi, everyone. It's great to be with you this afternoon. I am the founder and CEO of Footbridge for Families, a nonprofit that was incorporated in October of last year. I'm also the manager of strategic initiatives for our county's child welfare system. And I'm a native Pittsburgher. I boomeranged back here about 8 years ago to raise our 3 small children. And I've been working at Allegheny County's Department of Human Services for the past 7 years. And I entered into the innovation and tech space because of a problem that I saw our agency facing. Basically, because our country's safety net has so many significant gaps, when a financial crisis poses a risk to a child's safety, child welfare is called upon to fill in that gap. So to make this a little bit more understandable, think about a family that's been evicted and is living in their car, or a septic tank that breaks, or a furnace that breaks. Most often, these crises actually aren't that expensive to fix, but because of our lack of options, we rely on incredibly expensive safety net programs like homeless services and child welfare. The P. MacArthur Results First initiative actually puts the cost of just entering the doors of child welfare at almost $7,000 per child. When you engage with placing children, if they have nowhere else to go and they are living in a car, we're looking at almost $30,000, again, per child, for an average length of stay of 6 months. So this is business as usual to rely on child welfare because there aren't any other options is incredibly inefficient. And we all know, I am a senior child welfare administrator, the best that we do, it still is a traumatic experience for families. And so I wanted to look for an alternative. And so I did try looking for options. There are other emergency response platforms out there that really kind of solve for the problem that GoFundMe lacks. When you kind of think about, well, how would a family try and ask for help? You think of GoFundMe. The big problem with GoFundMe is there's no verification. There's actually a GoFraudMe sister site that kind of highlights some of those problems. And so there have been platforms that have come up to try and solve for that verification piece, but they all ask a family to basically prostrate themselves, tell their story, and then if it pulls on the heartstrings of the community, months later, maybe they have the cash in hand to do what they need to do to resolve their crisis. And this wasn't going to fit for folks who were in child welfare and investigating a family and seeing an issue that could possibly pose a risk to a child's safety. So I leveraged Carnegie Mellon's information systems consulting course. For those of you who have the entrepreneurial bug in you, you should know about this fabulous program. I am always will be grateful to Carnegie Mellon. They've been a fabulous partner and supporter. And they have an information systems consulting course where their students actually consult for a nonprofit. Here I was, when I came to them, I wasn't a nonprofit. I was, and still am a full-time government administrator and mother, but with an idea. But they were very gracious and allowed me to come in with my idea. And over 4 semesters, students helped me really build some WordPress pages that would help illustrate kind of what a prototype of the site would look like. Applied for and won the UpPrize this year in March. And then because of COVID-19 really exacerbating the financial situation that families are facing in, I recruited a team, we put the pedal to the metal, so to speak, and we actually are live. We launched this month. We are accepting referrals from a few select referral partners just to get started. So that's a little bit about how we got here, Natalie.
That's amazing. Before I move on to Erica, I just wanted to ask you, Kimberly, coming from the social work mindset, and we were talking a little bit about intersecting issues, what are some of the larger structural issues that you see families facing that has caused you to have to create something so innovative? with this space?
Thank you, Natalie. Well, I would say one of the things that I learned from doing this research is that the problem that I saw in our county is actually a problem facing the country. Jerry Milner, the Associate Commissioner of the U.S. Children's Bureau, just in January wrote a very intensive article showing research from across the nation of how this is a national crisis facing child welfare systems. That we are, and he implored us, it's time to stop confusing poverty with neglect. He cited our national child maltreatment data, and 60% of those cases are just because of neglect. Now, across our country, we have different standards of what constitutes neglect, but in most cases, a failure to meet concrete needs for a child is part of that, definition. And this is a problem also facing the healthcare sector. They are seeing that 70% of health outcomes are related to issues related to poverty. So, they call it social determinants of health, but we are now in a situation where health insurance players are actually helping to augment our safety net because there's such significant gaps. So UPMC, for example, they're providing permanent supportive housing for some of their clients and actually still seeing cost savings after paying for such an expensive intervention. So, from my perspective, going further upstream and preventing these crises is a really attractive option for systems players. And to your point about how and why do we have the situation that families are facing, I think, this is going to be playing out in the conversations leading up to November. But, there's, before we lived in Pittsburgh, lived in Austria. And that's a country where when we had our first son, we received a fairly substantial check to allow me to stay at home for that first year. And then the following year, when I went back to work, we had only to pay 80 euros per month for an entire month to have childcare from 9 to 5. Diapers were included, food was included. That is a kind of setup for success. Canada recently started paying families when they have birth to a child, and they've been able to significantly reduce their rates of child poverty. In the US, 1 out of 6 children are in poverty. And, we have an earned income tax credit and a child tax credit, but those really rely on, a mother being able to afford the childcare to get to work, to then be able to qualify for the tax credit. And then it comes much, much later, not the money that she needs to actually pay for childcare to get the job. So I think, there's some asset-based policy that could help. I think more policies that promote affordable housing, more job opportunities for individuals who are just starting off at a minimum wage, and more opportunities that progress beyond that. I think those are all potential systems levers that we could use so that we don't have families having to fall into our most costly and, in a way, punitive safety net programs.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense. So the idea is to decriminalize poverty, which I think we can all agree on. Moving on to Erica, I would love to hear more about your journey into the space of tech and innovation. I know we actually went to Pitt together, which is pretty cool, but I don't think we knew each other, so we'll have to remedy that after this. But tell us a little bit about your journey.
We did. We found that out before this call. So we also graduated from social work school together. I went to Pitt for my joint master's in public health and in social work. And when I graduated, I left Pittsburgh and I moved to DC, and I worked for the VA Medical Center in DC for the first 5 years after I graduated. So I was initially doing infectious disease research with a really remarkable infectious disease physician for the first year, and then I moved into inpatient medical social work for the 4 years after that. And it was really challenging and difficult work. I was taking care of any veteran who came into the hospital for any reason, who ended up inpatient on the inpatient medical floor. So, I was seeing a lot of veterans who had significant psychosocial issues, homelessness and trauma and drug addiction, and any number of issues that they then came into my care, and ostensibly they were there for medical care, but so many really required social work interventions, and we were responsible for finding them transitional housing, permanent housing, whatever the case may be. And during that time, I always say that I could handle kind of the weight of the issues, of the people that we were taking care of. the trauma and the addiction and these pieces, but the system was really, really difficult for me to manage. I had a really hard time with a system that wasn't necessarily responsive to the needs of the providers like me, and in turn, you know, then to the needs of some of the patients we were trying to take care of. And I kept pushing and pushing, and eventually, you know, big systems like that, it's hard to make change in. And eventually I decided to leave, and I left and needed something pretty light and cathartic. So I started my own business, and I was doing design consulting work. I still am very into kind of interior design and that kind of stuff, and started doing that. And during that year when I was building my business in DC, one of my friends suggested that I should go to a Techstars social impact weekend. And I went kind of apprehensively and kind of was like, I'm going to go, I'm just going to have a look around, see how this whole tech thing works. I don't know, you know, I'm a social worker. I don't know this stuff. And I went, and it was quite interesting, and it's interesting retrospectively, but I really went in a way that I think a lot of women approach tech, kind of thinking like, this isn't my space, but let me see what this is all about. And I went initially, and the way that it works is, you know, Friday night, everyone pitches, and then teams are formed and people kind of build out their prototypes over the course of the weekend. And I watched mostly men stand up, and in a room that was pretty 50-50 men and women because it was social impact. And I watched mostly men stand up and pitch, frankly, pretty mediocre ideas. And I thought, wait a second, I have an idea, and I had an idea that had been bothering me for a long time, you know, based on what I had seen at the VA. And so I ended up pitching and forming a team and winning the competition. And it was so validating for me for other people to say, wait a sec, that's the way things are working? You really are still dependent on bulletin boards and binders for resources? Like, why are things happening that way? And it was just really validating, and it kind of opened this world into the tech space for me, where, I mean, it couldn't have been more different. People were so helpful. People were so you know, willing to work with you, willing to think about how do you solve these problems. And I just kind of got bit by the bug. A few months later, I decided to leave DC and come back to Pittsburgh. I'd been thinking about coming back for quite some time. And I moved back, and I ended up getting a job at Innovation Works to run the UpPrize Social Impact Challenge. And through that work, I've met a number of really remarkable entrepreneurs like Kim and like others who similarly, who understand the problems facing the nonprofit space, who understand the problems facing marginalized communities here, you know, in Pittsburgh and Southwest Pennsylvania, but in a larger sense, nationally, and who are really putting their expertise to work building really remarkable companies attempting to solve those problems. So that's kind of been my course through technology.
That's amazing. So my question for you is, do you think moving forward to solve these larger problems, right, that everybody's working towards, is it going to have to be a more we versus me mentality? And do you think women are sort of socialized to lead that in that respect?
I do. I mean, I think that women are amazing, of course. And I think that we certainly are socialized to be thinking about the we. I don't think that is exclusive to women. I've certainly met with a lot of male entrepreneurs and non-binary folks who are working really hard to solve these problems. But I do think the biggest thing for women is recognizing that we have a place in this space, and we have an area of expertise, and we have an understanding, and we can use those things, you know, in conjunction with the power of technology, because technology is not everything, you know. We need technologists, but we need one another, and kind of recognizing how that symbiotic relationship can build really powerful, really useful tools that can serve the community as a whole.
No, I love that. And I remember one of the best pieces of advice I ever heard was that collaboration is the new competition. And so I think that feeds in so well what both of you ladies are doing. And we actually have a question here from Julia. Erica, what was your Techstars project and is it still in operation?
So it is not in operation, but I was essentially working on something and still work on it from time to time. It's, you know, one of the things that I've learned about entrepreneurship and about myself from this journey is that I had a really difficult time with the isolation of entrepreneurship. And I think that I hear that a lot from the entrepreneurs who come through IW, who come through our accelerators, who I've worked with through UpPrize. And it's kind of a double-edged sword, right? Where, you know, entrepreneurship is amazing because you can make your own schedule, you can do whatever you want, and you set whatever you want your life and your time to look like. But at the same time, you know, as a person who lives on her own, who is working on her own, it came to be too much isolation for me. And I had a really difficult time that way. And so that was kind of what moved me back into the kind of 9-to-5 workforce and landed me at IW. But the project itself was kind of looking at how do we use chatbots to help people find resources that they qualify for. So how can we better use technology to help people sort through all these resources? I think we're quite fortunate to live in a country and in a place where there are a lot of resources, but they're quite difficult to navigate. And in the clinical setting, when I was at the VA, I mean, we spent a lot of time just Googling and looking for things and printing things out and, you know, making copies of them and hanging them on the bulletin board and, you know, putting them into a binder. And I, you know, was really interested in finding a way that you could sort through that information more easily based on, you know, criteria of the person that you're looking for.
That's amazing. So Kimberly, acknowledging the barriers that women are facing in these spaces, you know, what keeps you motivated to charge forward? And how do you think you're going to be able to help change that game for young people coming up?
Wow. Well,
I like to end on a light question, you know?
Well, let me actually, could you restate the first part and then I'll,
sure.
I latched onto the second, so let me.
Yeah, just acknowledging the barriers that, you know, Women Plus have sort of faced in entering these spaces. You know, what keeps you motivated? And then the second part being about helping to change the game. Yeah.
So, you know, I am friends with Leah Lizandro of 412 Food Rescue, and I think so these words come from her, but I think it's true. When you see something, you see a problem, you see a solution, you can't unsee it. And it really just keeps pushing you forward. And, you know, as I've had conversations with others in child welfare, particularly with child welfare, you know, when I first began to notice this problem, it was child welfare caseworkers who do not make a lot of money, who were actually using part of their paycheck to help families so that they wouldn't have to become involved with the child welfare system. And I think when you see families struggle, it just becomes a spark in your heart that you, you know, kind of can't extinguish. So I think particularly in child welfare, but also that idea of when you see a problem and you see a solution, you know, you kind of, at least for some people perhaps, but I'm definitely one of those, once I get something in my jaws, I'm not going to let it go. And then in terms of, you know, other women coming up, I mean, I think it's remarkable. The 4 semesters that I worked at Carnegie Mellon, most of my students were females, and really fabulous, smart, savvy females. So that was, you know, excellent and an inspiring process. We had 10 interns for Footbridge this summer, and the majority of them were women, many of them who are still staying on even though they're going back to school. And so I think, you know, I think as I have kind of transitioned from formulating an idea for Footbridge, getting it going, now being operational, I absolutely want to continue to provide a space for young women coming up to learn about the ropes. I think learning how to start a nonprofit or really anything is a little bit like drinking water from a fire hose. And so, you know, to the extent to which we can bring people into the work that we're doing and help just open their eyes to some of the opportunities, that also actually, I think, keeps me going, that opportunity.
Awesome. And we have a question here, and I think we have time for one or two more questions. There have been a number of data systems that have tried to connect persons in need with public benefit systems to see what they were eligible for, but they were met with resistance from government departments that controlled those resources and application processes. Part of this had to be doing with the data privacy. Was that an issue you've been able to solve?
So is this related to Erica's idea? It seems like it might be.
In my case, no, it hasn't been an issue that we've been able to solve. Not yet, anyway.
And here's one more. How are you reaching women entrepreneurs from communities of color that are not from the universities? Would either of you like to?
Related to the UpPrize or to Footbridge for Families?
I think either of you could answer that if you want.
Yeah, so we are, if you go to our website, which I'll put in the chat right now, we are posting internship opportunities for anyone who's interested. Honestly, when I said that starting a nonprofit's like drinking from a fire hose, I think that also another metaphor might be juggling balls and trying not to let them hit the ground. And so the best that I've been able to do is post opportunities on our website. I really do. I think that's a great suggestion of being able to go out into the community and promote people who we want to work with. Right now we have really just focused on making our product as quality as it can be and getting the monies that we have. We've raised a bit over $250,000 to give to families in need. And so our priority really has just been about doing the work and helping families. But as we grow, I appreciate that comment about doing a better job of trying to let people know about Footbridge for Families and the opportunity to work with us.
And I'll just jump in too. I mean, I have tried to do everything that I can to reach people outside of the university systems. I recognize that, entrepreneurs who are coming through CMU and Pitt have an enormous amount of resources, and the entrepreneurs that come through IW's program similarly. But I have tried, to create connections with organizations that are serving people outside of Pittsburgh, that are serving people in the outer counties, that are from, some of the smaller organizations out there, from the nonprofit spaces, from United Way, from the county. I have a number of contacts at the county. And really, again, as someone who is a subject matter expert, connecting with other people like me who see the problem, as Kim said, once you see the problem and you see the solution, it's hard to unsee that. But I, really made a point to connect with those people and kind of break down this barrier that like, oh, tech, it's not for me. Don't worry about the tech. Tell me about what the problem is, and we'll figure out a way, just as Kim has done with connecting with CMU, to connect you with technologists who can work to solve the problem. Because these students at CMU that Kim has worked with, they can solve the technical side, but they don't understand the barriers in the same way. And so I've really tried to reach out to those people to make sure that they're not scared off by the scary tech piece of it.
No, I think that's an excellent point too. It just further illustrates the need for people of all walks of life to have input, because that's the only way that we're going to create a more equitable future, is for us to all share our gifts and work together. So thank you, ladies, so much for sharing your gifts with this incredible platform today. This was such an honor to get to be a part of it. And there's plenty of information on the group chat there for anybody that's looking for further resources. And I just want to thank Liftoff Pittsburgh. I want to thank the Pittsburgh Tech Council, and of course, Jewish Healthcare Foundation, and my friend Mara for letting me be a part of this. This was an awesome conversation. So thank you so much.